not a false sense of, wow, this is kind of easy once you get the hang of it. And then you go on to JavaScript and you're like, what have I done?
What have I done? Yeah.
And when they jump into a new role, they have this kind of imposter syndrome. So they end up trying to learn, like you just said, absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Another good one as well, if you're really having no success, go to some of the meetups in Dublin. There's a website called meetup.com. Type in tech, type in Dublin, tons of free events. I suppose as the years have gone on, the emphasis on the degree has been completely diminished.
That is there for you if you need it.
Cheers,
just
boss.
chilling with the water. Right.
So
we'll just have a little chat. So you're a recruiter.
Yep.
Or you were a recruiter.
Former
recruiter. And you also learned how to code through a boot camp. So I suppose I got a question from somebody there today and they were kind of asking on the Discord, what is the difference between a college degree and somebody who has actual experience? So if somebody doesn't have a degree in anything to do with coding, but they've done a bit of freelancing or they've done a bit of experience in something else, how does that weigh if you're looking for hiring people?
I suppose as the years have gone on, the emphasis on the degree has been completely diminished. And actually, if you look at some of the top employers as well, specifically JP Morgan, they've actually completely removed the degree requirement for technology jobs. That's going to be the trend going forward as well. People want practical experience. College degree is very good for graduate programs because that's considered, I suppose, the key that gets you in the door.
Yeah.
So really having that degree is just showing a potential employer that you will show up on time, can complete projects on time, and your university degree is basically just showing a future employer that this guy can be trusted to show up, get a project done to somewhat of a standard. Because everybody's not graduating with 1-1s, 2-1s, anything like that.
Yeah.
And an awful lot of the universities, they don't give you any, I suppose, practical experience. The ones that we see that are going for graduate programs and the ones who are successful in getting them typically have had a placement within their year of college. So they've done 6 months of one of their terms actually with a business, working on real world problems. Because when it comes to coding itself, everything doesn't go to plan outside of, I suppose, an education environment.
Yeah.
You know, real world problems are encountered daily. You're also not really going to be jumping into a company where you're really building something from scratch, unless it's a startup. And if you're coming in really underneath that 4 years of experience level, you're typically not going to really be in a startup too long, and you're not going to be given, I suppose, enough responsibility within a startup.
Oh yeah, sure. Some of my first jobs, and that's what I was saying in some of the videos, was I would literally get hired onto a team with no, I have a college degree, but it's nothing to do with tech. Learned how to code. I was seeing all these did you ever see it's the iceberg of junior development? You think it's just going to be HTML, CSS, and I need to learn a bit of JavaScript. And then suddenly you're like, oh, I need to know everything. You're starting to look at obviously GitHub and other like command line tools or whatever. I can't even remember all of them, but it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then eventually you do get a gig and it's can you change the color of this background?
Yep.
And it ends up just being basic CSS anyway. You didn't even need half of the stuff that you required to pass the interview.
And that's the thing, even when you're going into different companies and different organizations, depending on the size of it, depending on whether it's a legacy application, depending on whether it's a greenfield project itself, your role and responsibilities are going to change drastically. And I think one of the big things for people once they're jumping into the coding world, and I'll take, for example, actually people who are maybe career changing. Let's say they were in finance for 10 years and then they find themselves in a very unfamiliar environment. They're in finance, they're pretty much an expert level at the specific role that they had before. And when they jump into a new role, they have this kind of imposter syndrome. So they end up trying to learn, like you just said, absolutely everything, which I think is good to have a broad understanding of how things work. But really, when you jump into a coding environment, it's not the most social of professions. And so when people jump in, they're very afraid to ask questions. They're very afraid to lean on some of the more experienced team members for fear of looking like a bit of an idiot, we'll put it like that. But the thing is, everybody understands the level that you're jumping in at. Everybody understands the coding world as well. The more experience you get, actually, the less you focus on kind of broadening your skill set. So at the very kind of start, you keep everything quite broad. But really, the really senior guys, especially in the contracting world themselves, they have very specific niches when it comes to it. So when I was in recruitment, for example, worked with a lot of finance clients, and I knew contractors that specifically just contracted in, let's say, for example, the tech stack's typically Java and then Angular in the front end. So these guys are absolute experts at that. But if you throw any kind of React problem at them, if you throw a Vue.js problem, they haven't a clue.
Yeah.
But the thing is, with the experienced contractors, they're not afraid to find the guy who is an expert at that. And they're not afraid to own up and say, look, I was hired specifically for Java and Angular. You're going to need to either bring some new skills into the team, either through recruitment or through internal training efforts. But I suppose you only gain that confidence as you gain experience. But my biggest suggestion to people, especially at the start of their careers, don't be afraid to, I suppose, just look like you don't know enough, because the thing is, with tech itself, it's evolving so rapidly. Nobody knows everything. Nobody ever will know everything. So the best, I suppose, strategy for you is to lean on others. It's like any other organization. It's all a team effort. You know, there are individual contributors, and you will be in a role where you do have to individually contribute. But if it's something that's outside of your skill set, don't sit there panicking, looking through YouTube videos, trying to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
Just say it to your manager, say it to your boss. Say, look, I don't have that kind of skill set yet. Would love to sit down if you have any training materials, but I don't feel comfortable, I suppose, doing this whole thing myself.
Yeah. And you mentioned there, like, the two languages, really. You said Java, and then Angular would be JavaScript as well. So do you reckon, like you were hiring for big companies, but you were also doing contracts? It was like 1 year at a time.
Yeah.
So big companies, in your experience, are probably looking for people, yes, with JavaScript, but if they're hiring back end, they wouldn't be really looking at JavaScript. They're looking more at Java. That's kind of what the banks are using. And so if somebody is just learning, trying to get their first job, I always tell them to do the Odin project. You'll get all these projects done. You feel good about yourself. You kind of build up a skill in one language. Do you think, like first of all, you were dealing with Irish and Dutch markets, wasn't it?
Irish, Dutch and German.
And German.
The Dublin, Amsterdam, Berlin. So they were the three primary markets. I've also done some recruitment over in Australia as well.
Yeah.
But it's a common theme across.
What were they looking for mostly? Like, were they looking for, like, React? Was that the main thing, or were they looking for Angular or?
See, the thing is, I suppose there's a big difference between permanent and there's a big difference between contract. And that's also in interview styles and also what the expectation is. So for permanent roles, a lot of the time the employers, what they're looking for is somebody easy to work with. A lot of people get very bogged down on, I need to know this language, I need to know this, that, the other. But the thing is, when it comes to employment itself, 80% of the job is being easy to work with.
But Sean, I can learn a language. I can't fix my personality.
Well, do you know what, buddy? Time to look yourself in the mirror, do some public speaking, watch the King's Speech or something like that, because get used to it. That's the thing. You have to. 80% of your job is literally being able to work with others. The other 20% is the technical aspect. So it's going to be for people who are maybe a little bit more introverted. You don't have to be the guy that's charismatic, jumping into each room, but you do need to be comfortable asking for help. You do need to be comfortable in, I suppose, if you're having a problem, being able to actually outline what the issue is quite clearly, quite concisely. Okay, less is better when you're trying to explain what an issue is, and be comfortable doing that. You don't have to be jumping around a boardroom saying, oh, I've come up with the next Facebook,
Look
or
at
the
me.
next Google.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think that's a good point, because it's so, like, for tech, you do so many interviews just to get in the door. And some of them, like, I remember I was doing an interview for a company and I was thinking, oh, we're in business now. I've never failed an interview before. Did the tech challenge. It was absolute toilet. I was so bad at it. I was just under pressure. You're coding, like, you're never coding with somebody over your shoulder, especially, you know, in the freelance world. You can kind of just throw whatever you want at it. But in this situation, I was like panicking. But anyway, I got through to the next round miraculously. And then we did this culture interview. And I think I failed it within the first line that I did. He goes, so this is going to be your cultural interview. And I was like, oh, I presume this is just a checkbox kind of exercise, real casual. And he was like, no, this is really serious. And I was like, what? I never even heard of that. What are you supposed to do in a like?
Yeah.
How do you pass that phase?
See, the thing is as well, when it comes to like the cultural interviews and HR, you can kind of tell by what type of organisation they are quite quickly. So when it comes to the cultural interviews, a lot of the time we experienced in the recruitment sector, which drove all of us mad, is that the HR round was done before the technical round. And that's typically either called the HR or the cultural round to see if you're a cultural fit. Now, like we said before, a lot of guys who are working in code are absolutely fantastic when they get behind the computer screen, but they're not fantastic when it comes to these cultural round interviews, because the thing is, they're not tangible at all. And it's really up to the interviewer itself. And what we found quite frustrating is HR jumps in and then they make an assessment on somebody's capabilities when they're not from a technical background whatsoever. These guys haven't even talked to a technical hiring manager yet, and HR has made the decision to cut them from the process. So the thing is, a lot of people get very disheartened when it comes to, I suppose, landing their first job in tech, because it is very, very frustrating, especially when you're not used to technical tests. Let's say you're not even used to interviewing for graduates.
Yeah, for sure.
And it just becomes, I suppose, this kind of horrific cycle of, hope, rejection. But the thing is, that's part and parcel, whether this is your first career in tech, HR, marketing, doesn't matter. Everybody goes through the exact same thing. So what I would say is, when you're going into each job, especially when it's going to be your first stepping stone in your career, treat every interview more as a learning experience than, I really need to nail this, I really need to sell this. Because the thing is, at the end of the day, people always forget that, yes, you're there to interview and sell yourself, but the company has to sell themselves as well.
Yeah, like, why is there a vacancy?
Yeah, why is there a vacancy?
Why do people keep leaving?
And they're brilliant questions to ask. Actually, a lot of people...
Do you reckon?
Well, right, the thing is, if you want to be upfront and be honest, right, I have actually, for different recruitment agencies, I'm not going to name them, but so I'll tell you, not to toot my own horn, but there, when I was going for my last recruitment job, I interviewed with 7 agencies and I got 7 offers. And when you get to a position where you're able to actually get 7 offers, you can be a little bit more loose in terms of the questions you ask. And not loose, I mean quite targeted. So a lot of the time, like team culture itself, like recruitment, is very KPI driven. It is a sales environment. KPIs do make sense, but not unrealistic, and not silly KPIs that are going to tie you down and bog you down for hours and hours doing work that doesn't impact revenue.
Right, yeah.
So I would ask those types of questions. If I see in the business a lot of their senior people have left quite recently, or there's always a shift in, I suppose, people's desks. And what I mean by that is, let's say a guy was working specifically in front-end markets, you see him 6 months later working on data and business analysts, and then after that he's working on infrastructure or support engineers. You're like, okay, is that a staff turnover reason, or is it maybe, sometimes it's a good thing, there's so much volume coming in to the business that people can't just operate on their own market. But a lot of the time as well, that indicates there's not a lot of jobs that are coming in. Business is slowing down. So when you see people actually jumping from market to market, it's actually the fact that they don't have enough roles to fill in their current market. So you see them bouncing around. So that's usually an indicator that either business development isn't an emphasis in the business, or the business is actually struggling to get roles in. And that could be a lot of factors to that. It could be, typically in recruitment, it's just market factors. Especially last year was incredibly tough for tech, the amount of layoffs.
Have you seen, like, I know loads of people that have learned to code. So you see these kind of memes, and it's like, learn to code in 2019, do a boot camp or don't do one, and then get 100K a year. And then it was like, learn in 2022, 2023, 2024, and it's like, you learn way more and there's fewer jobs. But when you go onto LinkedIn, there's 1 million jobs, and there's this thing called ghost jobs. Have you heard them?
Yeah.
And it's just like placeholder jobs.
Yeah,
what's the story with that? Like, how prevalent is that, and what should like beginners do to kind of spot them or avoid them, or should you just apply to them anyway?
Just apply to them anyway. So the reason the placeholder jobs exist is, let's say there's requirements coming up in a couple of months. The roles and the vacancies, they're not live yet, but they're trying to basically build a talent base of CVs for the future. So a lot of the times, placeholder jobs are jobs that are the most consistent, that pop up quite regularly. So for example, it could be a very basic front-end JavaScript, React role,
Yeah.
bog standard. But those roles come in all the time. It's just a lot of the time you'll see placeholder jobs specifically by recruitment agencies, not by employers themselves. So you'll be able to spot it quite easily as well. Like, you know, if the agency name is always going to be listed on the job. So if you just do...
The agency is the one advertising the job.
Yeah, because
they know that we know we're going to need somebody who knows Angular and Java.
Yeah.
So let's just advertise a fake job, get them, and then sell them on to the first company that comes in the door, basically. Not sell them on, but they want to have this bank of eligible talent.
But see, the thing is, like I understand, it probably has a negative connotation about it that, okay, this is a fake job. But the thing is, recruitment agencies, they are talking to all of the employers that you want to work with on a daily basis. They are talking to all of your competition for the same jobs. So the thing is, agencies get a bad rep, but like, we're salespeople. Okay, we're developing clients. We don't know what jobs are going to come in. So if we had a chat with you, and typically what I try to get off somebody is, we called it SLAM. That's the way I learned. So your status, your location, your availability, and what money you're looking for.
Oh yeah.
If I have those pieces of information, I'm not going to be ringing you again about irrelevant jobs. Let's say you talk to me and you're like, I've got a real passion for the security sector, but I'm finding it quite challenging to get into a security-based business. I'll have that on your profile. We have a chat. I'll log those details about you.
So do you have like a profile for people that send their CVs in?
No, typically we'll save your CV on file after a chat. So with GDPR,
so you do
and we'll get your consent to keep your CV on file as well. So
that's why they're always
that's why we're calling.
Are you free for a call?
Yeah,
it's so that they can put you on the database.
Exactly. And the thing is, we only want...
It's in your interest to go on all those databases, even if you have a job or if you're just in the market for a job.
Yeah, and especially for beginners in the industry. So a lot of time, recruitment agencies typically, we're there because organizations cannot fill the role themselves. So we are basically...
facilitating hiring.
Yeah, but we're basically, a lot of the time, we are the last option for businesses.
Right.
Because their fees would be quite high because of what we're looking for. So a lot of times the roles we get in, unless it's a big project where they're looking for maybe 20 to 25 people and they need them started quite quickly, the roles we work in are quite senior and they're quite specialised.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's why it's always senior Java developer.
Exactly. But the thing is, we do work with clients as well where they come in and they have 20 to 25 requirements. They need the senior roles filled first. So often when you see a senior role advertised, you're going to see some mid-level and junior roles advertised. So obviously we need to fill senior roles first because who's going to mentor the mid-level guys and who's going to mentor the junior guys. So the thing is, I always say to people as well, just apply for the senior roles. What is the worst that's going to happen? Because the thing is, you might apply for a company, it's a senior role that's advertised, but internally they could have 4 or 5 roles that are not advertised where they need mid-level guys, they need junior guys. But if you make yourself as visible as possible, you know, a lot of time people as well, I never get annoyed when somebody applies for a senior role. Just because, okay, this guy, he's not senior enough, but he's nearly there. And the thing is, I know...
like his confidence.
Exactly. You know, now what it does annoy me when a guy with 3 years of experience applies for a CTO role. And that happens way more regularly than you think. And also,
I think I might have applied to a few myself.
Yeah, but also
3 months into
that's
the
not
job.
too bad. But on LinkedIn, then when they send the follow-up message and like, I've recently just graduated college, I've got no real-world experience, but you know what? I feel quite comfortable being CTO. You know, it's like I've watched Suits a couple of times, and now all of a sudden, I've got the biggest brain in the room. Now there's confidence and there's delusion, so there's a fine line between the two.
100%. Just there, what was SLAM again? Could you say it one more time?
So SLAM, so typically...
Just the acronym, because I've kind of questioned off one of them.
So status. So that basically means, are you currently employed? What's your current situation? You know, are you looking for work?
Status.
Where, you know, whatever. Location, where are you based? Now, this used to be a way more important one before COVID.
That's one I wanted to ask you on, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people that I know even are learning a new skill, like whatever it is. It could be marketing, it could be UX design, it could be coding, right? Generally it's coding. But if they're based outside the EU, right, and they want to get a job or even outside the US, they want to get a job in the US, they want to get a job you specifically would be more familiar probably with the EU. What's the story with people applying from like India or Africa or Brazil to try and get a sponsored job? Do you get me? Like, how common is that?
Yeah, the thing is, you're not really going to get sponsored if you're below the 5 to 6 year experience mark.
Okay, so that's kind of like bare minimum. You need to be basically senior.
Yeah. Thing is as well, you need to have intention of coming to Ireland. So a lot of the time people will be applying and banging their head against a brick wall. Because if you don't have your flight booked to Ireland, employers are not going to take you seriously. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, there's a lot of people that come into Ireland, and the easiest way, if you want to get sponsored by a company, is to come to Ireland through education. It's the simplest way. It's a bit more of a financial outlay, but I swear the headache and the time it will save you is unbelievable.
Right. So it's like if you're coding, let's say you're 2 years deep or you're 3 years deep.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're just new to it and you think, you know what, I'm going to take a bit of a career break, going to go and learn English in Ireland. You come over or you do a graduate program in something.
Yeah.
You bite the bullet, it's expensive, but then your likelihood of getting a high paid job, because some of the jobs, they're pretty high paid in Ireland.
Starting off, it depends on, I suppose, what company you're jumping into, because it can vary quite a lot.
Yeah.
Now, what's funny is, at the junior end, it varies by, I suppose, startups and SMEs will pay less than some of the bigger crowds like Amazon, Google, Facebook,
You're getting
all that
minimum
jazz.
wage, some of them, like.
Exactly. Now, the worst players in the country are the big four. I always tell graduates, steer clear of consultancies, because you do not learn anything.
But you get a nice lanyard that you can wear to the pub after.
You get a fantastic lanyard. You go there, you are dressed in a suit that you probably can't afford, and you definitely can't afford the gin and tonics that you're trying to buy there to impress your date. This guy works in tech. And then you're getting the bus home. Do you know what I mean? So now, obviously, that's for everybody at the start of their career.
Of course, yeah.
But the consultancies, and I've done a lot of work with consultancies before. The thing is, when you're a junior member of a team and there's no projects going on, you're basically sitting on the bench waiting for something to come in. Mm-hmm. There's also added pressure as well once you're in a consultancy environment. I think they call them like active hours or something like that. So now, it used to be you were assigned projects, but I've heard in places like KPMG and PwC, graduates actively have to seek out projects to become a part of.
Okay, yeah.
Which is a nightmare. So you just join a company, you don't know anybody there. You're then, if you're not a social person, you are forced to network internally to try find projects, because if you don't have enough of a ramp rate, or I forget the name of it, I've been out of recruitment a couple of months, just back from Thailand, lads, so the head's a bit melted. But basically, if you don't reach something like 80 to 85% efficiency, you go underneath a performance review plan. And it's just not a great environment. Now, consultancies are great in the future.
But would you even be doing coding in these places?
Yeah, and it would be pretty basic, to be honest, when you're starting off. But a lot of times as well, it's a bit uncomfortable, because when you join a consultancy, you're going to be client-facing. So imagine you jumping in, you're quite unsure of yourself, you're not really sure of your technical capabilities. And then KPMG sends you to a client, and you'll be with a senior developer as well, so you're not going to be thrown in the deep end. But the client's going to be asking you technical specification questions that you have no idea about. And you're going to be looking over at the senior through the whole meeting, feeling very uncomfortable, getting very flush through the whole thing. And for a lot of people that I've spoken with, that was a bad start for their career. And a lot of people, I suppose, lost the passion for coding, because it became more about politics, really.
So if you're kind of... if you're coming from, let's say you're from India, right?
Yeah.
You think, you know what, going to go to Ireland, going to do this graduate program or whatever to try and get the visa to come here.
Yeah.
Now you've got this opportunity to work in an Irish company. What do you think is probably like the best for them to aim for? If you're thinking, I want to maximize learning ability, but also most likely to sponsor me. Yeah,
the thing is, you need to find businesses most likely to sponsor.
Yeah, which would be...
That's it.
Have you come across an industry that are most likely to... Like, would it be the banks? Would it be startups? Is it a complicated process for them? Like,
no, what makes it complicated is that under EU regulation, 50% of your workforce has to be from an EU background, so as in hold an EU passport, and 50% then can be sponsored visas, or people who are just even on a stamp 4 visa,
Okay, yeah.
which is the equivalent of having full working rights in Ireland.
Right.
So, well, I just went off on a tangent there, but I want to get back to basically the best way to, I suppose, get yourself a job through education.
Yeah.
So, firstly, like you said previously, coming over here to learn English. Now, that kind of gives you a year to be here, but you can only work 20 hours a week on that, which is, I know it's quite hard for people because Ireland, it's not a cheap country.
No.
So you need to have significant resources when you get here and I suppose keep yourself going for the year before you find full-time employment. So typically if you come here on it'll be a stamp 2 visa. That's your education visa, okay? Now what you're trying to aim for then is a stamp 1, which is your, basically your work employment permit. So once a company sponsors you on a stamp 1 visa, you have to do a minimum of 12 months with that specific employer, and then you can start looking for other employers, okay?
Okay.
Now, what becomes a bit challenging after the 12 months, if you want to leave that job, you need to find another company to sponsor your visa again.
Oh, so they have to
So
take it on.
It's like starting the stamp 1 again. Now, what's more beneficial is that you've already been with an Irish company for 12 months. So you've already kind of proven yourself in the work environment here. So it's a little bit easier than the first time.
Yeah.
But you have to then get somebody to basically reapply for you.
Grand.
But you're probably better off sticking with the employer for 2 years, and then you can actually move on to your stamp 4 visa
Grand.
after that.
So if you're sketching it out from somebody who is thinking about it, like, oh, I want to get a sponsored job. If you're just applying from outside the EU for jobs in the EU, it's an uphill battle. So
Best
the
course of
easiest
action
way is...
Yeah, now that was just one education route, which is not the optimal one.
What's
the
the best?
optimal route is coming to Ireland for a master's degree.
Okay.
So if you get a master's degree, once you complete it with a 2-1 grade or higher, you get what's called a stamp 1G visa for 2 years. So that's as soon as you get your results, once you've got a 2-1 or above, you get a stamp 1G. Stamp 1G gives you access to the Irish job markets for 2 years, unrestricted.
Does it have to be a master's in...
Nope, masters in whatever you want.
In anything, okay.
Which is brilliant.
Right.
So let's say if you are sick of learning about coding, or there's a specialism you want to get into. Let's say you're a Python developer with an interest in data, okay? And you're like, I don't really want to do another full-fledged computer science course where I'm learning the same things I've already done. But what I would like to get into is data, or maybe machine learning, or business analytics. You could do your masters in that. It's only 1 year in Ireland as well for the masters. So once the 12 months is complete, you're done. 12 months is complete. You then have 2 years in Ireland to work completely unrestricted on a stamp 1G visa. And because you can work unrestricted, you can work 40 hours a week, no problem. Your employer does not need to sponsor you for the 2 years, which is the main takeaway from that.
Yeah.
But it gives the 2 years to prove yourself to your employer to then sponsor your visa.
Unreal.
That is the easiest way.
Yeah, that's really good.
Easiest way to do it.
So that's kind of a really good option for people who are interested in moving abroad or kind of getting the higher salaries or whatever.
Yeah.
And what about remote then? Because if I'm a remote contractor, I essentially am a freelancer within the country that I live in. So I should be paying my taxes in the country that I'm living in.
Yeah.
And I just get paid from a US company or an Irish company. Is that common in Ireland?
I'll tell you, it's not common for recruitment agencies. So if you're looking for fully remote work when you're not based in Ireland, I would say it's a little bit of a waste of time contacting an agency.
Yeah.
Mostly the contractors as well. It's very different, the contracting market. So for like full-time contractors in Ireland, typically contracts are 6 months.
Yeah.
That's the average. All right. But these guys are career contractors. So they'll have a new contract every single 6 months. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So a lot of the main contracting places in Ireland will be places like AIB, Bank of Ireland, Google, Facebook, all the big boys that have a lot of money to spend. Just typically as well, because day rates in Ireland, let's say for full stack Java engineer, between on the high end maybe 650 to 700 euro, on the low end maybe 5 to 550. So they're kind of the average rates.
Wow.
Now, if you do that over a year, it's a huge amount of money in comparison to a permanent role. Now,
why would they bother? Like,
with
why
contractors?
would AIB bother with a contractor?
Because
It's that expensive.
Because if a project isn't going the way they want
it's
it to
like
go,
step in.
you're gone. You're a hired gun, you need to remember.
yeah,
If you've got a permanent job, you then have rights.
Yeah.
which is the big thing.
Right.
So you're getting paid more for the risk
Yeah.
of being a contractor. Now, in reality, it's not that risky. A lot of people are a bit nervous as well, specifically when it comes to mortgages. They think it's quite hard to, it is actually quite hard sometimes to actually secure a mortgage because your work is not considered consistent. It's not considered permanent.
If you've done it for a few years and you're like, oh, this is 2 years of contracting and I've just made $650 a day.
Yeah.
You know.
Again, banks still
reliable.
see
Really,
it as inconsistent kind of work. But the thing is, there's great, I suppose, services out there. A company that we partnered with before, they're called Finero, Fenergo, if anybody wants to look them up. If you're considering getting into contracting, you can call this company. So a lot of times when people are getting into freelance or contracting for the first time, the big question that pops up, do I need a private limited company?
Yeah.
Do I need to set one of them up? Short answer, no, you don't.
Yeah.
If you do that, you're going to have an accountant that is going to basically have to, I suppose, look at your income, show you what you can actually write off as taxes, all that jazz. But there's services like Finero, which are called umbrella companies. They'll actually be your, I suppose, complete service provider. It basically, you feel like you're a PAYE employee when you use a company like Finero.
Okay.
Now, they're about €1,500 a year, but what's funny about Finero, they're so efficient at writing off tax, they can write off half the cost of themselves. So you're only paying half of the $1,500, $750 a year typically. Now it's $1,500 up front, but by the end of the year, the amount of tax write-offs and tax incentives that they do for you in the background without you having to worry about it is phenomenal. So $750 a year, I would pay that 20 times over.
Oh yeah. So if somebody's paying like, if somebody is doing freelance work and they want to do kind of the bigger contract clients, or they want to work with banks or whatever, they shouldn't really be worrying about all the business side of things, because you can outsource all that. You don't have to take on that whole headache if you don't want to.
And the thing is, it is a massive headache.
Yeah.
As well,
because
it's
you
not
need a
just
director too. Like in Ireland anyway, I know you need at least 2 people to start a company, and one of them has to be full-time based in Ireland. So it does get complicated. So if you could just use a company,
an umbrella
company,
company,
doesn't have to be just them, but
especially for starting off,
not sponsored.
Now, the thing is, like when you have your own private limited company, there are advantages, and you will save more, I suppose, money on tax, and your income will be slightly higher. But I think the headache factor for people is a massive one. I'd gladly pay the money just to not have the headache.
Yeah.
But the thing is as well, Finero actually gives you, as part of their package, your liability insurance. So a big thing as a contractor, you need, you need to limit your liability basically. Now that insurance can range between 4,000 to 8,000 euros per year.
So you might as well.
You may as well go with an umbrella provider. Now, the only reason I'm saying this, I did a lot of work with Bank of America previously. Had a guy based in Ireland, had his own company, and his bill came to €5,500 for his liability insurance going in. Now, he's a career contractor. He knew what it was going to be.
Yeah.
But could you imagine the absolute heart attack you would have if you just set up a private limited company, you've outlaid all that cash already, you think things are going well, and then you're hit with a $5,500 bill before you're able to even be on site as a contractor.
So it's a good place to start, is to just be like, okay, look.
And the resources Finero have are brilliant.
An umbrella company, and then work your way up. And what about, you learned the code?
I did.
So what made you do it initially? What, like, presumably you saw some nice salaries while you were on the recruitment game.
Yeah, I mean, like, the recruitment is lucrative, is what I would say. I think at the end of the day,
somebody who learned to code, sorry to cut you off, but somebody who learned to code, that, like, if they're very personable in like their personality, they could probably do well in recruitment as well. Yeah. If you didn't like the coding necessarily, you could still take that skill and what you learned.
So it's funny you say that. That's initially why I started to learn how to code. It wasn't so much that I wanted to be a software engineer, but after the markets I looked after, they were front-end markets.
Yeah.
A bit of back-end as well. So if there was any kind of full-stack requirements that had Java or Python on the back end, I'd also look after that. But predominantly I was looking after front-end developers. So I went to the Code Institute to do a boot camp. I'd highly recommend that if you are working full-time and you don't have time to be, I suppose, learning how to do it for free, which is definitely achievable through YouTube videos, other free resources on Udemy, and other kind of websites like that. Like HackerRank is brilliant as well. But if you don't have time, and you want a very guided process.
Yeah.
And you also get with the Code Institute 5 full-fledged projects that you've actually done yourself that will be your portfolio to show future employers. And they're very practical, real-world applications that you do build. I think they're fantastic, but they are quite expensive.
Yeah.
So they do have different kind of payment options, but they range between €6,000 you pay in full for the course, or I think it's about €7,500 to do monthly installments over a 12-month period. That kind of averages out to about €350, €400 a month, depending on what plan you go for. But if you have the money and you don't have the time, Code Institute, if you have the time and not the money, you could definitely learn it for free.
That's where like boot camps can be useful, because a lot of people think it's either you should do it or you can't do it.
Yeah, the thing is, learn how to code, the great thing about it is that it's an open source community by nature, really. So you don't have to spend huge amounts of money, but you do have to be a bit more tactical in what you're learning.
Yeah,
so
definitely. Because it's just like you see a video of somebody and they're like, make money online or learn to code in 3 months. And you're kind of thinking, okay, well, Python is obviously the thing, or AI, maybe I need to learn data science. And then you're kind of thinking like, what am I doing here? Like, you just start on one thing, jump onto the next thing. So when you were learning, you had this boot camp, this coding course, and it was a structured way and you found that useful.
Yeah.
So how was it? How was your process through it? Like you had a job at the time.
Working full time, yeah.
And you were doing it. So how did you balance your time with the course?
Yeah, I think the thing with everything in life, it's really kind of consistency. Really with anything. So I was working full time, and again, recruitment, the hours can kind of vary a little bit. So you could be working kind of longer some days. And it's quite hard as well when you're, I suppose, sitting at a desk all day and then you are thinking about the thoughts of, do I actually have to go sit at a desk again later on and learn how to code?
And use my brain.
Exactly. After talking all day, using your brain all day, and then having to do it in a much more, I suppose, alien kind of setting, because coding at first, it's a very odd experience. It's really weird. But the thing is, once you start getting to grips with it, especially, you get very confident on HTML and CSS, and that actually gives you, I suppose, not a false sense of, wow, this is kind of easy once you get the hang of it. And then you go on to JavaScript and you're like, what have I done?
What have I done? Yeah, what am I doing here?
But everybody goes through that stage of, you know, my God, I'm learning so much. And then you get the pit of doubt. Nobody avoids the pit of doubt. So once you're in there is light at the end of the tunnel. But all it takes is time. A lot of time people, they'll sit there on a problem and stare at a screen for 2 to 3 hours. A lot of the time you need to get up, get out of the house, don't walk around your house, don't sit down, go for a walk, come back, refresh, look at the problem, and you'll see it was actually quite simple. Thing is as well, if you've got any friends in the industry, ask them questions. If you don't have any friends in the industry, go onto Reddit, go onto some of the community pages, post a problem, go onto Stack Overflow.
Discord.
I've often found as well on Stack Overflow, this is quite a funny one, if you go there and you post the complete wrong solution, people are quicker to correct you than help you. So I would do that. So be blatantly ignorant, and somebody is going to be so angry at your ignorance that they're going to give you the full solution. So work smarter, not harder.
That's social hacking at its finest. That's good. And what about, was ChatGPT a thing when you started? Or? It
was starting to become a thing when I started. So I started the course last year when I suppose ChatGPT just released. Now it's only gotten better. And a lot of the developers that I spoke to, a lot of them, it's nearly 70% of their job now is using ChatGPT. So
if somebody's learning and they're kind of like, I can't figure out this game or whatever I'm supposed to make, this calculator. Stick with it for a bit, but if you're completely stuck, you know.
If you're stuck, use ChatGPT. Because the thing is, everybody's using it. There's going to be
everybody in industry.
Exactly. You know, it's now a tool that needs to be used. It's not one that is like, you know, maybe we use it. That will be open in your browser every single day, I can guarantee you. It's so easy to ask it a question, but a lot of people need to learn how to prompt it correctly. And I would say for junior engineers, you know, the senior engineers can use it because they already understand all the fundamentals of application development, of web development. When you're starting off, learn those fundamentals, because once you actually understand how the application should run, You're actually asking ChatGPT to refine your answer, not give you the answer.
Yeah.
Because if you don't understand how everything works, then using ChatGPT, you're not going to just improve your career.
Yeah, creating a bigger mess sometimes. Yeah. Like I've done that when I was on a project where I didn't really fully understand one part of React. It's called use context. And I was like, whatever reason, anytime I came to the documentation, I was just like, I can't. I just couldn't sit through it. It's like, I don't know, just a flavor that I hate or something. I don't know. I couldn't sit through it. I couldn't read it. I couldn't make sense of it. And I was like, all right, ChatGPT, help me with this. And the soup, the mess that I made, like spaghetti soup, just like insane. And eventually I got through it and I kind of reworked it and I spent the time on it. But you have to be careful with ChatGPT, especially in bigger projects, because you could just be introducing a big mess as well. But yeah, on the small projects, when you're doing it on your own or if you're stuck for ages, have a look at it. It's out of date for some stuff, but for the basics, it's class.
But also, once you get the code, why not prompt it as to, okay, explain the code to me. Okay, it can be used in ways that's incredibly beneficial, and it can be used in ways that's incredibly destructive. Because if you just ask for the code, at the end of the day, it's a machine. It's a bit like what you're coding. The computer takes you very literally. Okay, you might mean one thing, but you've literally told it something different. So use that same approach when you're using ChatGPT. Because it will take you literally. It won't take any inferences from you. It'll provide what you have literally said to it. So language is very important when you're actually prompting ChatGPT. So ask for the explanation. If it's not giving you clarity, keep prompting it until it gives you some clarity. But don't introduce that code until you understand what it actually does. No, because if you're in a big business working on legacy code, if you introduce something there, let's say you're working with AIB, nobody's taking money out of their bank account for a week because you fucked up.
Or they're all taking 500 out of the cash machine.
The Bank of Ireland machine, I'm not paying that back.
I'm not paying that back. It's free money.
Bunch of fools. Man.
That was mad. Even, Revolut. Like I use Revolut quite a lot. And then it was one Friday that I was trying to send money somewhere. And I needed Revolut because it was attached to my Western Union account, which I was using in Argentina to get money. And it was down. Revolut was down. And I'm just like, I know for a fact somebody pushed the production on Friday and then went home. And now nobody has work in Revolut. It has to be what it was. And it does happen all the time. So, but at least like if you're in a big company like that, there should be checks and balances and stuff that you don't really have to worry about. And what was I going to say? Freelancing. So actually, for getting a job on LinkedIn is the other thing I wanted to talk about, because I've done mostly freelancing, but I did apply for jobs on LinkedIn, and you gave me good advice, and it was stop with the quick apply, even though it's so tempting, and instead find out who is actually hiring. Find the person that's there in that company right now. That's either a developer, the manager, or you could probably go into more detail and then just like message them.
Well, if you look on LinkedIn, a lot of the time, it'll tell you who the job poster is. Their LinkedIn profile will be attached to it. More often than not, to be honest with you. So even if it's part of the talent team, if somebody from the talent team, if you message them directly, if they don't get back to you, that's when you broaden it further. Be like, okay, well, let me see who looks like the most likely engineering manager in the company who'd be looking after this role. Who looks like he's part of even a senior software engineer, message them. Now, the thing is, they don't like recruiters messaging them, but they do like developers messaging them, especially developers who want the job in their company. So they typically will respond quicker to you. Makes you stand out from the 1,000 applicants that have already quick applied. And you're on the radar straight away. Easiest way to get it done. It's helped so many people that I wasn't able to help, I suppose, myself in recruitment. Maybe I didn't have a role for them, but all I always try to do is give them advice like that. And more often than not, they got interviews secured. So one guy I dealt with must have made 400 applications over 6 months, 2 interviews. After I told him to do that method there, 8 interviews in a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you have like a draft, or you know, what do you say to these people? I know what I was saying.
But yourself.
Do you have like a formula or?
The thing is, the formula, the more formal you sound on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
the less likely people are going to respond to you.
Oh yeah, scroll.
People don't want a robot.
Yeah.
Literally message them and say, hey, I see X vacancy is live, very interested, free for a call. Simple, to the point.
Yeah.
People always think, oh, there's a magic method in if I use certain words, it's going to increase my response rate.
Yeah.
That's just not the case. People get messages every single day. They want something that's quick, concise. I don't even like when people say, hello, how are you? The amount of candidates that have sent me that message with nothing else underneath it. Do you know how many messages a recruiter will get on a daily basis?
Yeah.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah.
Do you want me to have a discussion with you now? Oh, how are you? How's your day? I don't know you. Tell me what you want and I might be able to help you.
Yeah.
But if you can't tell people what you want within one message, don't even message them.
Don't bother, yeah.
And I mean, be as
Keep
simple.
it short, but not like, hi.
Don't just say hi and
it's-
expect a response back.
yeah.
People are busy. And especially if you
And
don't know the guy.
100%.
If I messaged you, hi, even you and you're my friend,
Yeah.
you'd be like, what the hell
What
does
does
this
he
guy
want?
want?
This is going to be a big conversation.
But you're waiting for the next message. And if
Yeah.
one doesn't come, you're like, I'm not responding to that. I've got things to do today.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. It's
very odd.
Dead in the water. Yeah.
Yeah, you're dead already.
And the other thing I found anyway, I messaged somebody who was a front end developer at some other company in Dublin or whatever, and I was like, I see you have the job that I want. I noticed that you are recruiting there. I was wondering, what, in your opinion, are they looking for? You know,
That's
could
brilliant.
You give me some insight, right?
Yeah.
And as it transpired, she was actually going to get paid if I got hired, because it was like, what's that called again?
Yeah, internal referral bonus.
Referral bonus.
Yeah, people get paid for this.
So it's so it's actually in their interest to try and get you a
you
job.
in.
So it's almost
And it's
like,
way less than an agency fee.
and so the company's happy, the person inside the company is happy, and you're getting basically personally chauffeured into the company.
Yeah.
So that's just good advice.
Yeah.
That's just good
And the
advice.
thing is, you can do that from your bedroom.
Yeah.
You don't have to be in person.
Yeah.
Another good one as well, if you're really having no success, go to some of the meetups in Dublin. There's a website called meetup.com. Type in tech, type in Dublin, tons of free events, especially for international people who come over. Let's say if they're finding it quite difficult to make friends.
Yeah.
I know of about 10 specifically just Brazilian community tech meetups that happen monthly. Great way to meet people in industry, especially if you're just trying to improve your English when you first get here and you're finding it difficult to even, I suppose, converse or have interviews.
Yeah.
Just because it's nothing to do with your ability. It's to do with the language.
The language,
difference.
yeah.
Because the amount of talented developers that come over, but they usually spend a year just learning English, learning the local customs. But they're ready to rock in a developer role if it wasn't for the barrier of language. That's it. So it's very good if you come over and let's say the English isn't great. Go to these developer meetups where it's literally just Brazilian, there's different Indian ones, there's Chinese ones, there's really everything. So you can go there speaking your native tongue and ask people who have moved and have done exactly what you're about to do and how they got the step up. And the thing is, when you go abroad, it's even when the Irish go to any part of the world, for some reason you tend to bond an awful lot better than when you are in your own country.
Yeah.
So these guys are going to look out for you. They're going to tell you of how they did it. If vacancies pop up in their company, a lot of these guys as well, they're now hiring managers that go to these meetups. I know quite a
on the
few
lookout
Brazilian guys.
for-
They're quite high up now in businesses. They've been in Ireland 10 years. And they're the ones making decisions now. So if you go to these meetups, meet these guys, be personable, ask them, how did you do it? That's another great way of getting in there.
Yeah.
You know, because now you've actually got a personal relationship with hiring managers around the country.
And you could even just make friends. It's a good thing.
It's which is brilliant.
Yeah.
But that's probably one of the best methods. I know quite a few people that have got a lot of success from it. And then a lot of the time as well, it's quite funny in Ireland. I would say only 70% of the jobs that are available in Ireland are listed anywhere.
Right.
30% are from referrals internally. They're never advertised. You'll never know about them unless you go out and start having conversations
Yeah, and
with people.
sometimes the ones that are advertised are already actually filled.
Yeah.
So
Or they get filled internally, or budgets are cut. And that's what happened a lot last year. Roles were live, And then they looked at their financials and they were like, I can't afford this. Roles are cut.
Yeah. Solid. So do you have any kind of parting thoughts before for people who are learning to code, kind of struggling with it, or, you know, in that valley of despair, and then kind of, you know, what should they be aiming towards if they want to get in with recruitment or if they want to get a job?
So the thing is, valley of despair, there's light at the end of the tunnel. All you need to do, be consistent, be curious, ask questions, and don't get too depressed. Because I was in that depression mode, but the thing is, it only lasted a couple of days because I started reaching out to people. So with the Code Institute specifically, they actually had a Slack community where you could post questions. And a lot of the time, I'm a person that gets very frustrated if I can't understand it on my own. But I had to learn the skill of asking for help when it's needed. So main takeaway, don't be afraid to ask for help. It's the biggest thing. And it'll change the trajectory of your career in general, whether you're in tech or not. Asking for help isn't a weakness. It's a sign that you're very aware of your own skill level and that you want to improve.
100%.
And people, 99% of people don't want to see you struggle. They want to help. But if you don't ask, they won't know.
For sure.
All
right, that's great. Right.
All right.
We'll wrap it up. Ciao.
All right. Good chatting to you.